Hello everyone and welcome back to Next Gen Gaming for round 5 of the Star Wars Unlimited 4K at SCG CON Richmond. This will mark the start of the second half of our 8 rounds of Swiss before the cut to top 16. Today's feature match will be Vader Green versus Sabine Green. First time we've seen Vader here at the feature table in this tournament. We have Andrew Wiggs on the left piloting Vader Green. And then we have Blake Edmondson back at the feature table on the right piloting Sabine Green. Blake featured in the last 2 rounds. Took down Boba Yellow in round 3 and then Han Green in round 4. And now a new challenger has come to the table. And we'll see if Vader can take down Sabine. Blake satisfied with his opening hand. Andrew with the mulligan. And we are ready to get things underway. On the left, Andrew running the standard 30 HP command center. And Blake with the 25 HP energy conversion lab. Andrew going to start things out with the initiative in game 1. And we're going to see a Death Star Stormtrooper coming into play right away.
This is the next gen Stormtrooper. Right, yeah.
And Blake's going to follow up with a Green Squadron A-Wing as he is able to arena dodge the Stormtrooper and start to apply some pressure in space. Andrew claiming the initiative. Blake, 1 damage to each base with the Sabine action ability. Both players' deck lists will be posted down in the description below. Andrew has access to plenty of removal options. We'll see if those removal options will show up for him and he can stabilize the game and get to his very powerful late game threats. On Blake's side, he has to try and be as aggressive as possible to not get to that stage of the game. Ideally for Sabine, you are winning before Vader even becomes an option. So to start us out on turn 2 with the initiative, Andrew will play Super Laser Technician. And then Blake will come across the board with Green Squadron A-Wing. A quick 3 damage into Andrew's base. And then Andrew fires back with the Stormtrooper, blasting for 3 damage to Blake's base, 4 damage on each base. And then Blake will play Fighters for Freedom. Andrew claiming the initiative. And Blake will once again ping each base for 1 damage with the Sabine action ability. 5 damage on each base, 2 turns in. So at this point, Andrew able to match the pressure that Blake has put on. And here comes a sweet play to start things out on turn 3 for Andrew. Snowtrooper Lieutenant giving the Super Laser Technician +2 power, attacking with the Technician. That allows Andrew to trade the Technician into Fighters for Freedom, and he will ramp up to 5 resources. Great play with the initiative for Andrew. Now he still has 3 ready resources after Super Laser Technician being defeated. He not only becomes a resource, but a ready resource. Blake will respond with a General Dodonna into the ground arena. That's going to buff up the Green Squadron A-Wing, +1/+1. Andrew still with 3 available resources. He has the Stormtrooper in the ground arena ready, which means that Andrew will very likely be removing General Dodonna from the board this turn. Blake will attack with Green Squadron A-Wing. 4 damage into Andrew's base, and then Andrew will use the Darth Vader action ability to deal 1 damage to General Dodonna and Blake's base. And remember that Andrew still has the ready Stormtrooper with 3 power that can trade right into that General Dodonna. The action back over to Blake. And he's going to be aggressive with the Sabine action ability. 1 damage to each base. And then immediately, Andrew will attack with the Stormtrooper into General Dodonna, defeating both units. And now Blake will deploy Sabine and attack Andrew's base for 3 damage. That's 13 damage total on Andrew's base, just 7 damage on Blake's base. But Andrew will start the turn with the initiative once again. And this last turn felt very strong for Andrew. He was able to make 2 very favorable trades. And now with the initiative, Andrew will have the opportunity to remove one of Blake's threats immediately. And here comes Force Choke onto Sabine. That's 5 damage to Sabine. Enough to defeat her. Blake will get to draw a card, but that is a very nice start to this turn for Andrew. Certainly a good play, as it really hinders what Steadfast Battalion can do. Now Blake's still going to use the Energy Conversion Lab to play out Steadfast Battalion, ambushing the Shore Trooper. 2 overwhelm damage to Andrew's base. And then Andrew will immediately use the Snow Trooper Lieutenant to finish off the Steadfast Battalion. The Shore Trooper did have 4 power because Andrew has 6 resources. So between the Shore Trooper and the Snow Trooper Lieutenant, the battalion is defeated. And then 3 damage to Andrew's base with the A-Wing. And Andrew wastes no time. And he plays open fire to defeat the A-Wing. And after Blake claims the initiative, Andrew will deal 1 damage to Blake's base with Darth Vader's action ability. And this will be the first time that Blake has had the initiative in Game 1. But now the problem for Blake is going to be Darth Vader. Andrew has 7 resources, so Darth Vader can be deployed this turn. And this is that point where Andrew can really start to turn things around and put out some very big threats of his own. Darth Vader will be a very real problem for Blake. Blake's going to start the turn with Steadfast Battalion. And Andrew will immediately deploy the Darth Vader. Blake will respond with the action ability from Sabine. 1 damage onto each base. And here comes Overwhelming Barrage. That will defeat the Steadfast Battalion, giving Darth Vader +2 power for the turn. And then he will attack Blake's base for 7. The dark side is starting to take over Game 1. Blake will start with the initiative, but he is staring down a very angry Darth Vader. Just 2 more attacks from Darth Vader could give Andrew a Game 1 victory. Blake will have to try and find another 11 damage. He will start the turn with For a Cause I Believe In, revealing Alliance A-Wing, Sabine, Red 3, and Fleet Lieutenant. That will deal 4 damage to Andrew's base, 23 damage on now. But it doesn't look like there's anything that was just revealed for Blake that can change the outcome or slow down what Andrew is doing with Darth Vader. Darth Vader can come across immediately for 5 damage on Andrew's next action. And there it goes. Darth Vader, another strike to Blake's base, 21 damage on. And I do not believe Blake has any response to Vader. He does not. Blake scoops it up. Andrew will take Game 1 here in Round 5 at SCG CON Richmond. And we are ready to start Game 2 here in Round 5 of the Star Wars Unlimited 4K at SCG CON Richmond. Andrew off to a great start here in Round 5, taking down Game 1. Looking to close it out here in Game 2. Both players coming into this round 4-0, looking to remain undefeated as the quest to 6 wins continues. 6 wins is the mark these players need to try and get to likely have any shot at a spot in the top 16. Andrew keeping his hand here in game 2. Blake with the mulligan. It is always scary being down a game in a best-of-3 match and having to mulligan that opening hand, because now it all comes down to hoping you don't get stuck with a bad hand on the mulligan down a game. Andrew has some very good cards in the sideboard that could come into play for this matchup. The Consortium Star Viper and Bombing Run. Those cards may very likely play a role going forward in this match. For Blake, it's not as clear. We may not see Zeb in this match because Blake did not see any Sentinel units he needed to clean up in the ground arena in game 1. Also didn't see any of the Traitorous, so there's no real reason to bring in the Fang Fighter. So on turn 1, we see Green Squadron A-Wing coming down once again for Blake, the seasoned Shore Trooper, back out for Andrew. Blake with the initiative to start on turn 2. 3 quick damage to Andrew's base, and then Andrew fires back with the Shore Trooper. 2 damage to Blake's base. Blake's going to play out a copy of R2-D2. Put that top card onto the bottom, and then a Viper Probe Droid into the ground arena for Andrew. And he will get to check out Blake's hand. We see a Medal Ceremony, a Steadfast Battalion, and K2SO. So a pretty strong hand for Blake. This turn 2, not amazing, right? Not super aggressive with R2-D2, but moving forward, a pretty strong hand for the next couple turns.
So there's a Steadfast, there's a K2 and a Medal Ceremony.
We see the action ability being used on Darth Vader. 1 damage to R2-D2 and Blake's base, so 3 damage on each base. Going into turn 3, Blake will still be on the initiative. Let's see if he goes right back to Andrew's base with the A-Wing to remain aggressive. Blake with his back against the wall here in game 2 needs to find the maximum amount of damage each turn to try and avoid getting to a spot where Darth Vader can come in and take control of the game. Blake will start things out with a quick attack from Green Squadron A-Wing. 3 damage to Andrew's base. And then a nice little play for Andrew. Imperial Interceptor down into the space arena. That will defeat the A-Wing. It appeared as though Andrew considered attacking into the R2-D2 first, but then he recalled that Blake had a Medal Ceremony in hand, so that immediate 3 damage to A-Wing is important to try and dodge the Medal Ceremony. Now it does allow Blake to attack for 1 damage with R2-D2 into Andrew's base. 7 damage on now. And once again, Blake sends the top card of his deck to the bottom off of the R2-D2 trigger. And here comes the Viper Probe Droid across the board into R2-D2. R2-D2 defeated. Viper Probe Droid just 1 damage back, and now Blake will put down the K2SO into the ground arena. Andrew does not have any ready resources available. He does still have the Shore Trooper ready in the ground arena. Let's see if he chooses to claim the initiative or attack with the Shore Trooper.
I take 3. Okay, I think I have a line here. I think I actually crashed this guy into K2.
And Andrew is going to run the Shore Trooper into K2SO. That's 2 damage onto the Rebel Droid. And then Blake will continue to apply the pressure. Sabine action ability used. 1 damage to each base. And here comes Sabine being deployed. And another 3 damage into Andrew's base with Sabine. We've got 11 damage onto Andrew's base now. 4 damage on Blake's base. And then Blake will follow the attack up with Metal Ceremony, giving Sabine the experience token needed to dodge the Force Choke. That's a fantastic play for Blake, allowing Sabine to get out of Force Choke range. Andrew does have the initiative, and with the initiative, he will take the Viper Probe Droid into K2SO right away, enabling the trade. But that does deal 3 more damage to Andrew's base off of the when defeated trigger on K2SO. With the action over to Blake, he's going to attack with Sabine. 4 damage onto Andrew's base. Neither player has used a resource here on turn 4. Blake has to really like the position that he is in at this stage of the game. Andrew will fire across with the interceptor. 3 damage to Blake's base. And Blake will play the Steadfast Battalion. No one to ambush, but he will try and force an answer from Andrew. And Andrew just plays a bombing run. 3 damage to each unit in the ground arena for Blake. But it is not going to be enough to defeat either one of Blake's units. Blake able to claim the initiative. And he's got Steadfast Battalion in play with Sabine there as well, which can be a big burst of damage here on this turn. And sure enough, Blake will smash into Andrew's base with the Steadfast Battalion with his first action of the turn. 7 damage to Andrew's base. And Andrew will respond with another bombing run, which will wipe out Blake's board, but not after a huge amount of damage dealt with Sabine and the Steadfast Battalion. The action back over to Blake. He is just 5 damage away from forcing a Game 3 here in Round 5. Does he have For a Cause I Believe In, or does he push threats onto the board? And Blake is going to play a Fleet Lieutenant. He does not have any ready units to attack with, but it puts pressure in the ground arena where Andrew currently doesn't have an answer on board. Andrew just claiming the initiative, so the door is open for Red 3. Blake putting a Red 3 into space. That is a very nice line for Blake last turn. The Fleet Lieutenant first really forced Andrew to claim the initiative, allowing Blake to play the Red 3 last turn as well and keep him on the board. Andrew will start the turn with Overwhelming Barrage, defeating the Fleet Lieutenant. But Red 3 will attack Andrew's base for 3. And then Blake showing the For a Cause I Believe In. That will do it here in Game 2. Blake has forced a Game 3 here in Round 5 at SCG CON Richmond. It is time for the deciding game here in Round 5 of the Star Wars Unlimited 4K at SCG CON Richmond. Andrew took Game 1. Blake came back in Game 2 and was able to force a Game 3. And now it all comes down to this, as Darth Vader tries to hand Sabine her first loss here at the feature table today. Now, the player that started with the initiative won both of the first games. We'll see if Andrew can keep that going or if Blake can break serve here in the final game. To start us out, Andrew will play a Stormtrooper in the ground arena, and then for the 3rd straight game, Blake starting with Green Squadron A-Wing on turn 1. Andrew is able to claim the initiative, and Blake will start with the aggression using the Sabine action ability. 1 damage to each base. An identical start to the first turn in game 1. Andrew with the initiative. He is going to throw down an open fire, defeating the Green Squadron A-Wing. And that feels like a very strong play for Andrew on turn 2, taking out the threat in space. And Blake will follow up with a Fighters for Freedom in the ground arena. And now the action back over to Andrew. He will take the Stormtrooper and attack the Fighters for Freedom. 3 damage onto Fighters for Freedom. But that does give Blake the initiative pretty early in game 3. We saw Andrew able to hold the initiative for several turns starting in game 1 before he finally gave it up, and this time Blake able to take the initiative for turn 3.
I am going to take some damage on this turn, I think. I'll take my 3. Yeah, we're going to start there.
And to start things off, Blake is going to attack with the Fighters for Freedom, making sure to get that damage in.
Man, that's not too bad, actually. It's a pretty tame hand.
And that's going to be 3 damage to Andrew's base. And then Andrew will play a Viper Probe Droid. As we get to take a look at Blake's hand, he had a Green Squadron A-Wing, an Alliance X-Wing, a Fleet Lieutenant, and a Bright Hope.
I laid them out if you want to just look.
I actually have a photographic.
It will be interesting to see how Blake goes about the rest of this turn.
So I'm used to Magic, I can just keep them up, but I can't do resource cards in this game. So.
He could play down a Bright Hope
Play Magic a lot, actually.
into the Space Arena, or he could play 2 smaller units into the Space Arena. He could play Green Squadron A-Wing and Alliance X-Wing, but he does have to be careful about Bombing Run, as that could wipe out both units in one action for Andrew. So Blake is going to play the Green Squadron A-Wing. That will deal a damage to Andrew's base off of the Fighters for Freedom trigger. And then we're going to see Andrew use the Darth Vader action ability to deal 1 damage to Fighters for Freedom and Blake's base. That will defeat the Fighters for Freedom. And Blake does decide to put the maximum amount of pressure that he could into the Space Arena as he plays out the Alliance X-Wing as well. Andrew just going to claim the initiative. And now Blake will start the damage train with Sabine. 1 damage to each base with the action ability. He then deploys Sabine, and that's another 3 damage coming through to Andrew's base. 9 damage on Andrew's base now. And 3 damage currently on Blake's base. Andrew with the initiative. He now has to decide whether to answer Sabine or answer the Space Arena. We know he has Bombing Run in his hand, but he also has to think about the Steadfast Battalion with Sabine being in play. And it looks as though he was strongly considering playing the Force Choke. But he's trying to do the math here and see which way Blake can deal more damage. Is it with the Steadfast Battalion and Sabine, or does he need to be more concerned with the space units? And he is going to use the Force Choke to take out Sabine and try to play around the Steadfast Battalion. Now, Blake should have drawn a card off of the Force Choke, but I do not believe he did. Hopefully that does not affect the outcome of this match. Blake plays a General Dodonna into the ground arena, and Andrew will respond with a Shore Trooper into the ground arena. And with Dodonna on the board, Blake able to swing with Green Squadron A-Wing for 4 damage onto Andrew's base. And then Andrew uses the Darth Vader action ability to put 1 damage onto General Dodonna and 1 damage to Blake's base. And then before Dodonna gets defeated, Blake able to attack with the Alliance X-Wing. 3 more damage to Andrew's base before the Viper probe droid attacks into General Dodonna and makes the trade. Blake does claim the initiative, and that will conclude the phase.
I'm at 16 right now.
Yeah, I've got 16.
So damage totals, 16 damage on Andrew's base, just 4 damage on Blake's base. Blake with the initiative here. And he still has the 2 units in space. He has to figure in this situation that a bombing run is going to be coming down for Andrew, because it certainly seemed as though that is what he was trying to decide whether or not to play on the last turn. So Blake will start with a Fleet Lieutenant. That is going to allow Green Squadron A-Wing to attack for 5 damage. 21 damage on Andrew's base now.
I keep having opportunities to play this card. And just keep, like,
The action back over to Andrew.
I think now is the time to bomb it.
And now we are going to see the bombing run. Andrew playing bombing run will defeat both units in the space arena for Blake. And Blake will respond with another unit in space. He plays red 3.
Take three.
And now another decision to be made for Andrew.
All threes. This is the only
He
card
could trade with the Fleet Lieutenant,
I think I'm still
attacking with the seasoned Shore Trooper,
chance I just lose this.
or he could claim the initiative and potentially deal with red 3.
I think I trade for
Vader will be coming out next turn. Andrew just going to make the trade as he attacks with Shore Trooper into the Fleet Lieutenant.
Now you get initiative. I'm going to claim.
And Blake will claim the initiative, which should guarantee at least 3 damage with the red 3.
I will gamble.
Blake with the first action. And he's going to play a Fleet Lieutenant. That is going to allow Blake to attack Andrew's base for 5 damage with red 3. And now Andrew is officially in range of 4 cause.
Shoot down the dude.
Andrew responds with an Imperial Interceptor. Wait.
Another play.
He may not respond with an Imperial Interceptor. He will play a Darth Vader instead. And Darth Vader will be able to ambush the Fleet Lieutenant off the board. And Andrew will search the top 10 cards of his deck for villainy units. Cost 3 or less. He's going to play a Cell Block Guard into the ground arena.
Black unit.
But a 4 cause I believe in could finish it here on this turn for Blake. And there is the 4 cause I believe in. Blake has it.
I'm already lost.
He reveals the top 4. 4 damage to Andrew's base, and that will do it. Blake has completed the come-from-behind victory once again and will remain undefeated after 5 rounds here at the Star Wars Unlimited 4K at SCG CON Richmond. Thank you to everyone joining me here today for the Round 5 feature match. Stay tuned for Round 6 coming soon. May the Force be with you, and until next time, take care.